Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us from around the world for this very important webinar. We appreciate giving you a chance to learn about Unixi. Today's topic is on how to discover and eliminate credential threats before the breach. Why is this such an important topic? Because the number one way, underlined, highlighted, bolded, to steal data from your enterprise remains credential theft. And so we want to dive right into this. Let me first start by introducing myself. My name is Rich Eisenberg. I'm the VP of Client Development here at Unixi. Proud to be here. And with me is Nick Nelly. He is our senior field engineer. He's the technical brains on the call. And the way we're going to break this up is I'll introduce the problem and solution set, do a very quick end user demonstration, and then we're going to pass it off to Nick so he can dig into the behind the scenes parts of this. So let's just dive into the topic. The problem here is that there is a lack of identity control for unmanaged apps in virtually every enterprise we go into. This is a pervasive threat. You're not unique. Everybody has this problem. And what do we mean by unmanaged apps? Let's take a look at what we know about enterprises today. Undoubtedly, most of you have a traditional SSO solution deployed today, something like Entra, Okta, or Ping. And when we ask senior security leaders, why did they bring on board that SSO solution? It was because they wanted greater management and control over who has access to what. Now, what traditional SSO gives you is this ability to control onboarding and offboarding, use things like roles to actually provision someone into an application. So again, only users that are supposed to get access to a particular application get that access. They wanted to remove passwords because vulnerable passwords are where the phishing attacks and other attacks happen, to try to get hold of those credentials. And then finally, they wanted to give the user a much better experience, not have to look up passwords and give them a simple single sign-on experience. The problem here, as you see by this wedge, and this wedge may be slightly different in size for your environment, but that wedge is SSO only protects around 20 to 30% of the applications in any enterprise. We know this to be the case because there's 30,000 SaaS apps out in the world and only 3,000 or 4,000 of them actually have a SAML integration. I think if you go to the Okta site, I think they have 2,100 applications that are protected. A lot of companies say, I have all my critical applications protected by SSO. And I promise you this is not the case, and we'll show you that in just a couple of slides. So what this sets up is you have a host of applications, whatever that is, whether it's 50% or 80%, doesn't matter. You have a large number of applications that are still using basic credentials, meaning username and password. And the buckets are non-SAML apps that cannot integrate with SSO, right? Some of those are pretty important applications like banking apps, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, State Farm Insurance. None of these have a SAML. There's Shadow SaaS, where users are actually signing up for and accessing applications that security teams are not even aware about. So this is a huge risk, maybe something like DeepSeek or ChatGPT that they're not entitled to. And then you have shared accounts. Now, shared accounts are in two buckets, known and unknown. Known shared accounts are where administrators need to share passwords. Unknown are where peers are actually sharing their username and password with other peers. You might be shocked and surprised to find this out, but we find hundreds of situations like this. In fact, 34% of employees, for whatever reason, share their username and passwords with other users. And both of these buckets winding up being huge decommissioning risks because 40% of employees, when they leave, retain access to applications. And if they are taking these critical shared account username and passwords with them, then you have a potential huge leakage issue. So this is the problem of having a lack of identity control around these unmanaged apps. And that's really what we're focused on here today. Why is it that we're focused on them? Well, the number one way to breach enterprise data is via credential theft. And what that means is if users have passwords, this is what the hackers are going to go after. And today with AI, it's easier than ever. And I'm going to share with you a couple of critical quotes because we're not the ones saying that This is the number one way. This is Verizon's data breach report. This is IBM's data breach report. They're the ones indicating that this remains the number one way to steal your data, right? Threat actors have refined social engineering into repeatable, scalable discipline, and credentials indeed are the prize. And from Gartner, human error and social engineering will account for 85% of data breaches by 2026. And the reason for this is we have no enforcement control over what end users do with passwords. We tell them to follow length and complexity rules. They don't. 75% of end users use critically weak passwords that can be hacked. 30% use easily guessable passwords like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if you think I'm kidding, I'll show you an example in just a minute. And 52% of users use redundant passwords, which means all a hacker has to do is get access to one and they get access to many. Now, here's the problem. Even when people tell us, I have my critical apps protected by SSO. Yes, it's like putting a camera, alarm system, and 3 bolts on your front door, but leaving the back doors wide open, flapping in the wind. This is the way the hackers are going to get in, and we can prove that to you by sharing these devastating breaches that have happened where companies have lost $100 million or more in this case. Now, I will promise you that everything you're seeing here on this page could have been prevented. There's actually a research report which shows that Unixi would have prevented every one of these breaches because passwords go away, as you'll see in just a few minutes. Now, all of these companies had traditional SSO in place. Many of them had password managers in place, and they all do extensive cyber education, which, by the way, has less than a 2% impact on employees. Today, on average, 15% of employees click the phishing link when you're doing simulation testing. Let's take a look at just one of these. Look at McDonald's. And I'm bringing this up because this is a very big company, multi-billion-dollar company with a huge cyber education budget. And yet the breach that happened for them this past summer in August was a PII database, an applicant database with 64 million records. And the password protecting those 64 million records, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not kidding. Don't laugh. This is not an anomaly. We uncover this kind of weakness every single week during our discovery as we dive into various companies and their risk makeup. So McDonald's is now facing GDPR fines and multiple class action lawsuits. And you can see when you look at these other breaches, even 2 times for Okta, an SSO company themselves. So this idea that SSO is going to save me is a false sense of security that you need to get away from. You need to uncover your risk and make sure you mitigate it and remediate it, okay? Passwords aren't security, simply they are bait, and that's why we want to show you how we can take these unmanaged applications, completely make them managed. Now, again, we don't replace your IDP. We're not getting rid of your SSO. That's in place, great. Let it do its job, but we're going to fill that circle and we're going to complete the job here so that all these unmanaged apps now become managed and your risks go away. So as I brought up, this is the lack of identity control that you have today, and we're going to take this and convert it into this. So what happens is, number one, we're going to uncover all your risks. You are going to now gain identity control over all these unmanaged apps. You will have onboarding and offboarding control. You will have audit-ready governance. You will know exactly who is accessing what, and you can do attestation and make sure that they are getting only that which they're supposed to get. We're going to enforce that through policy. We're going to eliminate passwords for the end user. They no longer have knowledge, control, or management over a password, and what that means is all associated risks to having those passwords go away, and users get a universal SSO experience. How do we do this? Well, we do this through a patented cryptographic browser extension. We don't care what browser you have. Most companies have 2 or 3, and whatever ones you have, we are going to deploy to. And once we're deployed, coupled with that browser extension is something called Key Derived Authentication. This is what's going to replace the horrible and vulnerable passwords that your end users are using today, again, where they're using things like redundant passwords. Key Derived Authentication is a cryptographically generated complex passphrase. The users do not have any knowledge, control, or management over that. They can never know it. You can never know it. We never know it. Again, it's mathematically derived and generated. And that's the system that's going to save your bacon. It starts off with discovery. So the first thing we're going to do is paint a very clear picture for you, right? We're going to give you audit and compliance. Who is accessing what? We're going to show you where there are password liabilities. We'll show you where Shadow SaaS is being used that you don't know about. We'll uncover all shared credentials, including even those peer-to-peer shares. We'll show you where you have MFA risks. We'll show you where SAML is being bypassed. So anything regarding authentication, where any application authenticates in the browser, you're going to get this full audit picture very quickly. You'll know all your vulnerabilities. But the key is, then we're going to give you point and click remediation so that all the risks go away. You're going to be able to now enforce identity policy for all these unmanaged apps. You're going to be able to halt Shadow SaaS. You're going to be able to control shared access. There are no more passwords for shared accounts, and peer-to-peer sharing cannot happen because of the way the platform is constructed. And lastly, anything that was using a vulnerable password before will be converted to our universal SSO with MFA if you so desire. So if the app doesn't have MFA, you can enforce MFA and guarantee two-factor. And the beauty of this is that the universal SSO means the user no longer manages passwords. They can't make mistakes. They can't do anything redundant or weak. And our cryptographic passphrase are never stored anywhere. So there's nothing to phish. There is no social engineering tactic that they can use to extract the password from the end user, and you're going to get true access control. All of these unmanaged apps you now manage, and you only grant access to end users to exactly what fits for their role and their job, and nothing more than that. So we're going to dive into the demo. Okay, this is the game plan here. Nick's going to show you in just a few minutes how we give you an audit-ready discovery, everything about passwords, everything about Shadow SaaS, shared accounts, all the non-SAML apps, all the unmanaged apps, where you don't have MFA. We'll show you how we can very easily onboard users through policy. We're going to show you how we remediate all risks because the users no longer have passwords. They can't do the wrong thing. They can't give up a password in a phishing expedition. It's not possible. And then lastly, we will have mitigated all associated risks here, right? There is no credential risk. There is no social engineering threat anymore. There's no phishing that can happen with the system. That's why we can confidently say all those breaches we were showing you earlier could have been protected and defeated. So I'm switching screens now, and this is just to give you a quick end user view. This is how I access every single application here in my job at Unixi. I do not have any passwords. You'll notice there's no password field here for me to log into HubSpot, which is our CRM, where we have very critical information. You'll notice a login with the Unixi button, and and that is it. That is all I have. I have no passwords to manage, know, or give up to anybody in a threat. I click that button. I'm authenticated with KDA behind the scenes, and that's the end of the story. Over and over and over again, this is how I access my apps. And now we want to show you what this looks like behind the scenes. So I'm going to pass the baton to Nick, and he's going to take you into the console and show you around there.
Perfect. Thanks, Rich. Well, now you've seen the end user experience. So as Rich said, we're going to take a look behind the scenes. We're going to look in our management console, show you first and foremost all of that powerful audit-ready discovery data that we capture, and then how you can take those actions, remediate and mitigate those risks using Universal SSO and the Unixi extension. So like we discussed, the first thing that Unixi provides you is complete visibility. The goal here is to eliminate those blind spots so that you have full visibility and an audit-ready log of every application your users are accessing, which users are accessing those applications, and even how they're authenticating into those applications. So you will know where you have applications that are truly fully managed by your existing single sign-on provider, but more importantly, you'll know any and all applications where users are still able to log in with that simple username password combination. Our extension captures every single authentication event using those corporate credentials, and this includes Shadow SaaS. If one user logs in one time to an application, our extension will capture that and you will get that visibility. So you will truly have 100% visibility into every application your users are accessing, including those that you have no way of knowing about today. Now, in addition to the user behavior and where users are going, the Unixi extension captures information and presents to you any and all risks and vulnerabilities associated with the password still in use by your users. Now, this data is viewable at the organization level, but also gives you the ability to dive into each of those individual critical corporate applications and identify those security risks. For example, here we see Atlassian as our most used application, probably a pretty critical application. I can view within this single screen a holistic view of all vulnerabilities and risks associated with Atlassian. Now, this includes things like where users may be bypassing SAML, as well as bypassing MFA. If there are users that are still using username passwords and have also turned off MFA, you're going to get that visibility. You're going to know where users are weakening an already weak authentication system. We're also going to highlight any and all risks of those passwords in use. This includes users that are using weak passwords, critically weak, easily guessable, or brute forceable passwords. It includes where users are reusing the same password across multiple applications. So for example, we can see users that are using their Atlassian password for Monday, for Slack, for MongoDB, which may be a critical corporate database. Anywhere users are reusing passwords, we're going to make that visible and present that to you. Because again, this is that increased security risks. If one of these applications get compromised or one of these credentials get compromised, the attackers have that lateral movement, have the availability to do increased damage in your environment. Now, one of the biggest things that we're capturing, as Rich mentioned, are any and all instances of credential sharing or account sharing. This includes those approved and known shared accounts. You will get a full audit visibility into every user accessing your admin accounts, your service accounts, your team-specific, your marketing or IT accounts. Not only you get visibility, but as we look towards the way our extension can manage secure these accounts, you're able to secure those known and approved shared accounts. We're also going to capture those users that are sharing their credentials with other members of the team. We can see here that Lacey has shared her Atlassian credentials with Darlene and other members of the team, probably in a way that is not known or certainly approved by your team today. We give you that visibility, and then of course, once that password and credential are removed by universal single sign-on through Unixi, this is no longer possible for your users. The other huge challenge that Rich mentioned with shared accounts is that these become a huge decommissioning issue. When users leave the organization or simply change roles and no longer require access to those shared accounts, 40% of users leave and walk away with those credentials. What our extension does is presents you with that visibility of where you have users that have since left the organization that are deactivated in your IDP. Again, your IDP remains that single source of truth. But when users are deactivated from that IDP, our extension has the intelligence to detect when they may be walking away with those credentials. So you're going to get that visibility to where you may have an offboarded user that still retains access to your applications and your credentials. Again, the first goal of our extension is to give you this visibility, to give you that discovery data, that full audit-ready log, and then through our control mechanisms, give you the ability to remediate and mitigate all of those risks. Now, this starts by simply building out your approved whitelist of applications. What are those applications that you want your users to have access to? This can be done directly from the discovery data here or pulled directly from our catalog of thousands of applications. Simply select the applications that you want to approve for your users and then give that true role-based access control using our policy management. So let's look, for example, at monday.com. This is an application that's accessed by many of our users today, but as we can see here, uses a simple username or email password authentication. This is a prime candidate for Unixi to govern and secure, as well as provide you with that access control. Now, to do this, you simply add that application to your approved whitelist and then set up a policy within our management console. Policies tie the appropriate users or user groups that should have access to that application to the specific applications. Those groups and users are pulled directly from your IDP that remains your single source of truth. There is no integration required. All of this is set up through single clicks of a button. Once you've selected the users and the applications, then you can determine how those applications are governed and managed by the Unixi platform. Turning on single sign-on eliminates those passwords, presents the end user with that one-click login experience. The Unixi extension also has the ability to enforce an additional round of MFA for applications that don't support that today. So you can not only manage and secure those applications, but apply additional rounds of MFA as needed. Again, no integration with the end application required. All configuration is done in the management console. As soon as that policy is set up and applied in the console, that gets communicated out to the appropriate extensions of those end users. And now the next time I go to the login screen within Monday, I notice that the Unixi extension has taken over that login flow. There's no longer a password field. There's no longer a password for me to know, to manage, or to be able to share or give up. The end user gets that simple one-click experience to log into any and all applications, and your security team gets complete control and access management over every application, as well as that full visibility. So we've looked at individual user access, but what about those approved shared accounts? Let's say you do have an admin or a service account that you require for your business, but you want to make sure you can secure those accounts. Again, all of that is managed within the Unixi Management Console. Simply create that shared account. Here we have an account for our sales admin team. Determine exactly which users require access to that shared account, and then simply add that to your existing policies. So if we come back to this policy that we've created for Monday, we can add our sales shared account. And in doing so, we will now present those end users with access to not just their individual account, but any and all approved shared accounts as well. So now when I go back to log into monday.com, I see that in addition to being able to log in using my individual credentials, I now have access to this shared account as well. Again, there's no password, there's no password field, there's no credential that has to be shared, rotated, communicated out to the team. Every user with access to this shared account simply logs in with that login with Unixi button. If one of us leaves the organization or changes roles, that password doesn't have to be rotated. There's no communication of a new password. That account is fully secured and managed through the Unixi console. In addition to that management, what you get within Unixi is a more complete audit log of that shared account. Because Unixi ties everything back to the individual user's entity within your IDP, you now know exactly which user is accessing those shared accounts within the application. While monday.com simply knows that sales admin logged in, with Unixi, you now know exactly which user is logging into any of those shared or admin accounts, so you get a more complete audit trail of that shared account. So we've looked at how Unixi manages those approved accounts, right? How you can assign and have full user role-based access control over those approved accounts. But what about the flip side of the coin? What about those applications that either fall outside of an individual user's role or outside of that approved whitelist in of your organization? Should a user try to log in using their corporate credentials to an application that is outside of their role or outside of your corporation's approved whitelist? So think additional Shadow SaaS sprawl. Think about those phishing attempts where there's a dummy page sent to your users. Anything that falls outside of that approved whitelist, should a user try to log in, the Unixi extension has the intelligence to capture and block that login. No user can now access an application that falls outside of their role. No user can sign up for or log in to new Shadow SaaS applications. And no user can fall for any phishing attempt because the Unixi extension will block that, prevent users from logging in. And the only course of action is to submit a request to your IT and your admin team. So your IT team has full control to approve and review every new application, every new request from your end users. This goes to an inbox within our management console and can also be forwarded to any internal ticketing system that you have in place. So in this way, you get full visibility and you get full management over where your users are going and who's accessing what. So again, to wrap up the demo, what you get with Unixi is first and foremost, you get a complete audit-ready discovery. You will know where your users are going, what they're accessing, where passwords are being used. You will know any and all vulnerabilities and risks associated with those passwords. With Unixi's full access control, you will be able to onboard and offboard users directly into any and all applications, including those that are currently unmanaged by your existing SSO. And with Unixi single sign-on, you eliminate those passwords, thus remediating and mitigating all credential risks. There's no more social engineering. There's no more phishing. There's no more weak, easily guessable, brute forceable passwords. You secure and manage every application for your organization. If you're interested in learning more, please follow up and reach out for a deeper demo. And be sure to ask about our free discovery evaluation report. With just 1 hour of your time, you will be fully deployed and set up within Unixi, and will start gathering all of this valuable discovery data in your organization. In less than a week, you will have complete visibility into every application your users are accessing, full analysis of all passwords being used, including shared passwords, reused passwords. You'll know all the Shadow SaaS. You'll be able to identify any and all of those poor user behaviors, where they're bypassing MFA, where they're bypassing SAML, and so much more. With that, I'll pass it back to Rich and we'll start the Q&A.
And thank you very much, Nick. Awesome demo. I just want to reiterate, highlight, underline what Nick just said. Every time we do one of these evaluations, we shock companies. There's so much that you don't know. We're going to uncover all of these risks, all of these liabilities, every bit of exposure that you have that could lead to credential theft. And if you have the knowledge, you have the power to remediate and manage it. Okay, so we really urge you. It's free of charge. As Nick said, it takes less than an hour to get us installed. 7 days later, we come back with a full report and a full audit summary of everything that's a risk. You'll see it in real time, and it's very powerful. So let's jump in now to see what a couple of questions we can take, and hopefully this will be of value to you. Thank you so much for participating and spending time with us today. Okay, great. So let me open up the chat window. Let me bring Nick back, and we'll just start firing off the questions. There's Nick. So oh, this is a good one right here. So do I have to get rid of my existing IDP, Nick?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And ultimately, some of our customers do choose to replace their IDP with Unixi. But as we mentioned at the beginning of the call, our goal is really to help complement your existing IDP. We're really there to help complete that circle of kind of the applications in your environment, provide you with that same level of access management and secure authentication into those applications that your IDP currently can't reach.
Yeah, first and foremost, protect everything that's unmanaged today. If you decide you want to replace your IDP, that's certainly a personal choice. But first and foremost, let's protect what's not protected today. Next question, what's it take to deploy Unixi for doing the free discovery?
Yeah, and for both the free discovery and even for full implementations of Unixi, it really is very light lift. In 30 minutes to an hour tops, you can have Unixi fully deployed. Really, all it takes is a quick SAML integration with your existing IDP, and then using your existing MDM tooling to push out that extension of those devices. Again, 30 minutes, maybe an hour, and all of that powerful discovery data is going to start flowing in through your system.
Yeah, it's such a small lift, as Nick said, and then it just collects data over the next week, and then we're going to give you that full and detailed report, which I think goes nicely into this next question. What are some of the key findings that you'll provide with the discovery report, Nick?
Yeah, and so with the Unixi extension, you're going to get both an inventory, kind of an audit-ready inventory of every application your users are accessing, who's accessing those applications, and how they're authenticating into it. So you'll first get that inventory, that audit-ready log, but then you're going to get that full risk and vulnerability breakdown, highlighting maybe those most critical credential risks within your environment. Where do you have credential or account sharing? Where do you have users using critically weak, reused passwords across multiple applications? Where do you have those orphan accounts? Where do you have users that have left the organization but might still have active accounts in those end applications, retaining access to your corporate applications even after they've left your environment? So again, you're going to get that audit-ready inventory of every application your users are using, as well as any and all vulnerabilities, credential risks within your environment as well.
Yeah, if you don't have that visibility today, you don't even understand what the risk is, and that's such a great question. Look, we're really out of time. There are several more questions. We're going to try and follow up individually. If you gave us your contact information tied to those questions, we'll make sure they get answered. You can also always reach out to me directly. It's super easy. Rich at Unixi, unixi.io, rich at unixi.io. And I'll be happy to make sure I funnel any questions that I can handle directly to Nick, and we'll get back to you very quickly. So thanks again for your time, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Cheers.